They weren't so much, it wasn't so much story I was looking at for them, because a lot of the time the stories are quite sort of specific, let's say. It was more technique a lot of the time. I'd say Axe. Axe was one of my influences for a scene within a film within the film.
Right.
And I think the only reason it's on the list is because the title is Axe. So it's not that scary at all, but it's got this kind of eerie, it's like a Californian sort of, I guess, slasher film, but it's basically a rape revenge film about a mute girl who, you know, whose house is invaded. But one I wish I'd seen before making the film, and I should have seen, and it's a masterpiece, is The Witch Who Came from the Sea. But I only saw that after making the film, and it feels like it would make a really good double bill with Censor, because it's about like trauma, and it's very woozy. It's actually shot by the DOP of Jurassic Park and Death Becomes Her.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really good film. So I would say if you want to, you know, watch something brilliant that's on the video nasty list, then go for that. But I mean, I was watching most of them and going for a lot of the bad ones, really.
Well, because I mean, there are ones on there which are sort of the more well-known ones. I mean, obviously you've got like things like Possession and Inferno and Tenebrae, which are quite well-known. But then you've got other and then things like Cannibal Holocaust. But there are other ones which I hadn't heard of until I started kind of, you know, looking into it for this. And there's one that you've got like a pastiche of. I don't want to give away any spoilers. Maybe this isn't too much of a spoiler, but you've got one which is Don't Go in the ... which maybe was related to those.
Well, there's a lot of Don't Go in the. There was lots of places you shouldn't go in those days. Dangerous places.
There's loads of places you shouldn't go. What's the next slide? We've got one after that. Right. So I wanted to talk about writing, and I remember when you posted this, I was actually quite impressed. Not only because it's funny, but because you're basically kind of like, you know, capturing like you know, however many months or possibly even years of Zoom chats with Anthony, who is not in the same country as you. He lives elsewhere. Is that right?
Yeah, he lives in Uruguay. So he didn't live in Uruguay when we started working together.
Bloody
inconvenient.
He's
British.
In Notting Hill, wasn't it?
Well, actually, it works really well, him living in Uruguay, because there's two things. One, we work on Skype most of the time, but also when the time difference is what it is, there's almost always someone working on the project, because we can, like, you know, I'll wake up in the morning, and then when I run out of steam, it's his morning, and he can, like, so it's a tag team. So that works quite nicely.
How long were you well, tell us how you met him and how you decided to co-write with him first, and then maybe how long you were working on Censor.
Yeah, so I wanted to find a writer to work with on a feature, and I had a few ideas for a feature. So I was asking around. This was probably like 2011 or something like that, and I asked lots of filmmaker friends who were good writers, like who did they recommend, and read scripts by a few people and met a few people, and Anthony was the one that I ended up wanting to work with, because actually one of the reasons was because I felt like he was, there's two ways of saying this. One is that he disagreed with me more, or you could say he was the most honest. And I think that was it. It was like, this isn't a person who's just going to like blow smoke up my arse and say, oh, that's a great idea. He's going to say what he thinks. And I think that's really important for any collaborator, you know, to be able to productively, you know, speak your mind and listen to each other. And I felt like not only did I like his writing, but that was, you know, that was there with us. So we met, and I told him about, I had this idea for a film about a film censor, and he was like, that sounds great. But then we kept getting opportunities to make short films, or I did, and I basically roped him in on those. So we did like Man vs. Sand, which was through Phil Ilson, who's in the house. We did Man vs. Sand, The Trip, and Nasty together, 3 shorts before Censor. But during that whole period, we were working on treatments for Censor. And we ended up then, I think it was beginning of 2016, or yeah, around then there was an iFeatures thing that came up. And I'd met producer Helen Jones through Underwire Festival. And And I was like, we should submit to iFeatures. And I teamed up with Helen and Anthony, and we submitted to iFeatures, and drumroll, didn't get it. And then off the back of that, we asked for some feedback and then rewrote the treatment or redrafted the treatment and went to Film Wales. And that was kind of the start, because they came through with money for the first draft. So we were working together, me and Anthony, for quite a while before we actually started writing a draft of Censor.
Find us at NoDirectionHome.com.